what happened to all those close friends that we've had over the years? I've been thinking about that the past couple of days. Like not what happened to the individuals, but what happened to the relationship. Why have we lost so many good friends over the years? I've been thinking about just like the human dynamic of having meeting people and forming great relationships and maybe even going years, communicating at a high level, really resonating with each other. And then for some reason or another, those relationships fade. They just start to disassemble or they diminish, they kind of dissolve. And then before you know it, you're an adult and you look back on your life and you've had 15 really close relationships. And now you have two, and now you have three, and now you have one, and now you have maybe none. And I just think, what happened to them? But close friends, like in elementary school, sometimes you have friends that are at school, and then, you graduate, you go to a different school, whatever. And it was very purposeful to that environment. That happens. Then, I think about friends I've had that were outside of school friends. When you have free time, you go check up on that person, and you go off and do your little adventures. I'm just thinking about my own life. Sometimes you have one commonality, one common interest. Maybe the interest of playing a specific sport or going outside and going on your little adventures as you do when you're in elementary school. But then you have friendships and it's like, as you become a teenager and you become an adult, we mature, or we grow, or we just become our own. You find out the things you like, the things you don't like, the type of environment, like social environment you want to be around, you don't want to be around. And sometimes friendships split in that way. Sometimes people don't want to be in this certain environment, other person gets all their value from that environment, and things differ. Sometimes the emotional intelligence of one or more people in a friend group just doesn't develop at the same level as other people. And so when there's tension, when there's problems or issues, they go unaddressed. Because addressing issues is challenging. Confrontation is challenging. And so sometimes, for example, sometimes you always hear about money issues. Sometimes people loan somebody money and then they expect it to be paid back and it doesn't get paid back. Something like that. Sometimes I've talked to or come across people in their 70s, or we see videos of people that are more elder in age, and yes, and they're reflecting on a relationship that they've had for 50 or 60 years. And then you come to find out that the reason that long relationship ended was because of a debt. Sometimes even a small debt. But integrity can damage good friendships. Lack of communication, lack of willingness to communicate, lack of willingness to be vulnerable. Because I guess as we get older, we come into our own. We start to understand ourselves, become more comfortable with ourselves. And if one person is really comfortable with themselves and able to just be themselves, vulnerable, just not vulnerable in the sense of always sharing how sad they are, but vulnerable as in just being yourself, not worrying about how you're being perceived by another person, not worrying about what someone might judge you as if you have a different opinion to them, just being comfortable being yourself. And when you have one person that's willing to be comfortable with themselves and another person that really cares and is concerned about what people think about them and how they act because they don't want to come off a certain way, that brings friction into a relationship. And I think over my life, some of my close friendships, probably like a proper handful of my relatively close friendships over my lifetime have separated because of that. A lack of willingness to develop and come into your own. And I'm not ignorant to the fact that I might have been, at certain points in my life, on the side of somebody that didn't come into their own yet. They're still concerned, me. I might have been concerned about how I'm perceived and what people think about me, or I'm insecure, or I'm concerned about certain things about myself that maybe other people don't care about. But when you're if you're in that stage of life, or if you've ever been in that stage of life, it's difficult for someone that is very comfortable with themselves and very secure in themselves to be around someone that's constantly insecure, because it adds a weirdness to a relationship. So I wouldn't be surprised if some of my relationships ended because I was on that lack of self-awareness side of things. Like, have you ever had a friendship that you don't really understand what happened? This is one time you were talking and having a great time, and then years later you're looking back on saying, how come we don't reach out to each other? How come I don't communicate with that person? How come they don't communicate with me? Have you ever experienced that and just wondered, reflected back on, like, what happened there? What happened? And I guess the reality is, I do believe in what I refer to as purposeful relationships. Not purposeful as in like, oh, they came into my life for a purpose, they had a reason for being there and then they left. I'm not on that frequency. But I mean purposeful as in you're at a stage in life, you meet somebody that has a certain similar interest or common denominator that the foundation of your friendship is built upon, and that foundation is there for 4 or 5 years maybe, and then as you continue to develop and mature and grow throughout your life, the foundation is no longer there, and so you might have that friend still around, but without that foundation, that structure of friendship starts to slowly decay and crumble and dissolve and break apart, and then one day it just collapses. And so I guess we look back on that collapse and we say, what happened? What happened right there that caused that? And the reality is, sometimes nothing caused the collapse at the moment the friendship officially ended. The collapse started happening a long time ago when the foundation by which that friendship was built upon was no longer there. The friendship actually ended at that point, way back maybe 5 years prior. But it didn't like formally end until it collapsed, 5 years going forward. And so I think sometimes we look at past friendships that had a purpose, that they were true friendships at the moment. Maybe we weren't quite too sure what the foundation was at the time. Because who cares what the foundation of a friendship is when you meet somebody and you have a great time and you really connect? You just know that you connect. You just know that you're having a great time with that person and you want it to continue. Until it doesn't. And I do believe that it's okay for people to come into our lives, serve a purpose, and not just a purpose as in a one-sided purpose. I mean a mutual exchange of value. Sometimes that value is in being able to do activities together like run, hike, swim, right? Play sports, compete. Sometimes that value is in meaningful, deep conversation. And it doesn't have to be deep as in like spiritual, but as being deep as in there's depth. Maybe it's an intellectual conversation. You're both interested in biology and you have a deep fascination with biology. And your whole relationship is based around this interest that goes beyond what is common for the layman. Like, you ask me about biology, I don't know a lot, but if someone is well educated in biology and they meet someone else that is, there's not a lot of people on the street that you can walk by that knows a lot about biology. So I guess, a lot of people have very specific niche interests, and that's what the foundation of the relationship. Some of my relationships are very much like that, where, and some of them are just on like Instagram, but I've known them for 10 years because we had a very niche shared interest, and we talk about that, and we form friendships off that. I have people that I play games with in virtual reality. I've never met them, but we have a shared interest because we like a particular game or we like a particular strategy, and we met online and we constantly share reoccurring moments together, right? Friendships are just a collection of moments. I think it's important when reflecting on past friendships that maybe have served their purpose and served their time in our life. I think it's a good idea to not mourn the friendship, but to celebrate it in our minds. And the reality is, it's a sad reality, but the truth is, sometimes we spend too much time invested in a friendship where the foundation is no longer there, where it's already collapsing, and we're putting all our effort into trying to hold this structure, this building up, that has no way of maintaining its integrity. If you pull the foundation out of a structure, it's lost its integrity. So you can do things to artificially keep it held up, but it won't remain there forever. And I think sometimes we go through life and we think because a friendship was there existing truly, authentically at one point, and we celebrate that so much, we continue to hold people in our lives that maybe no longer have a purpose for being there. Sometimes to the point where it's damaging. I've seen a lot of people that have very toxic friendships because they were at one point for maybe many years, maybe many decades, genuinely there as an exchange of value to each other, meaningful to each other's lives. And then when that point passed, they do everything they can to keep them there to a fault. I've seen people with friends that steal from them. but they keep them there because, oh, I've known them for decades. Or they're people that they surround themselves with, not because there's any enjoyment in it, but because they're lonely and they're scared of being alone. They're scared of having no one to communicate with. I think I would classify that as toxic. I've seen people who surround themselves with people, friends or otherwise, and their integrity is lacking. They don't keep their word. They say they're gonna do something, they don't do it. I've seen people's lives fall apart, like quite literally fall apart, like financially, and the certainty of their life falling apart because they keep friendships around, if you can even call it that, just because they existed so much in the past that they feel that they almost owe the person their loyalty, even when that true friendship is no longer there, just out of a sense of obligation. They feel like they have to, despite how damaging that relationship can be to each other, even out of a sense of loyalty. I don't believe in that. I mean, I don't think I've ever let friendships continue that have gotten to that level of I guess toxicity. I really don't like using that word too much, but I see it happening, and I think a lot of times it's just because maybe we're afraid. We're afraid of what it means to remove somebody from our life who shared so many mutual experiences with us. Some people feel that way about the relationships, which you can call a friendship, with their partner, the life partner, with someone that they're married to or that they've been with in a relationship for many years, and they're afraid to end it or to let it go, rather, because of the commitment that they put into it. It's like the sunk cost fallacy, the idea that people will continue doing something just because they invested so much into it, despite knowing that if they had to make the decision to start at that moment, they never would. It happens. Why do we lose good friends? I think the answer to that is because we're always changing. When people talk about stages of life, they often talk about like being an infant, being a child, being a teenager, being a young adult, being an adult, and then middle-aged. But when you look at it that way, you might only have like 8 stages of life. But the reality is we're constantly changing. Our very being is fluid. And so it makes sense that during one 6-month period, you might be this one person. You might resonate deeply with another person. And then beyond that 6-month period, you're no longer that. You've changed. Your perspective on the world has changed. Your ideologies have changed. Your philosophies have changed. Your way of being has changed. Your motivations have changed. Your interests have changed. And with each change, you become more or less like another person. And it just makes sense that we grow away from people. And so why do we lose good friends? Because we're always changing. You know, there's that saying that you can never step in the same river twice, right? You step in it once, and you get out, and you step in it again, and it's a completely different body of water. Same stream, completely different body of water. And I think the same is true with friendships. If you and a certain person are on the same path and you resonate, and one person goes off, or more likely what happens is you both go your own direction, maybe the friendship is no longer there. But in the same way that we have romantic relationships that last decades, even though you're both mutually changing, you might be changing in the same direction. So I think it's okay to let go of those friendships. It's okay to understand that we have close friendships throughout our lives. Throughout our life, they serve purpose, they have meaning, they have value, they're worth cherishing, but they're also worth letting go. But it's amazing. It's just amazing that we can connect deeply with another human being to the point that we're willing to spend a significant amount of time with. And that alone is awesome. That alone is amazing. Just to think that we have the ability to form deep, meaningful relationships with people, communicate and really get to understand them and get to know them, get a perspective on what their existence is like, and share our existence with them. And as a result, become close friends. And I think that's what really allows me to connect deeply with people. When you have two people just willing to be open and share their thoughts, share their feelings, share their experience, and be able to connect by looking at someone in the eye and saying, like, I see you, I acknowledge your existence, and I appreciate the time you spent with me. I hope if you've ever been going through a similar thought, just looking back on your life and friendships that were there and and wondering what happened, that if you know that the purpose that it existed is no longer there, if you know that you're no longer on that same level as them, you went your own ways, that you don't mourn it as much as reflect back on it in appreciation and continue to go forward in your own path and be willing and being open to sharing new experiences with other people. A lot of times we become adults and all of a sudden we stop looking for friendships. We feel like no one's capable of being our friends. And it's because we stopped looking. We stopped being open with ourselves around other people. So that prevented us from being able to connect. So just wanted to share that. I hope you got something from that, and I'll see you in the next video.